What does Auburn's latest commitment mean for the 2025 class?
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zac Blackerby, and thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. We're talking Cruton. It's a Cruton Thursday with Locked On Recruiting Insider Brian Smith, also a recruiting writer at auburndaily.com. And our recruiting segments are brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. Brian, since we last spoke, Auburn landed another commit in the 2025 class, a guy that you're very high on, a guy that you've talked to, a guy that you've seen multiple times, Devin Williams, the cornerback from Buford, Georgia. You're impressed with this kid.
I think he can play corner. I think if he really wanted, he could play free safety. He could play nickel. He plays at a program in Buford that's really, really good. He's been coached well. Yeah. He's not going to have to play 2 or 3 years of getting bigger, stronger, faster, learn the system. He'll be able to play in some capacity as a freshman, even though it's the SEC. That is rare at any spot, especially corner, where you can be exposed. But Devin Williams has the goods.
Yeah, he's listed at like 5'9", 5'10", depending on where you look. Around 160 pounds. I expect he'll be a little bit larger, have a little bit more on that frame by the time he sets foot on Auburn's campus.
Yeah, he's a kid that's still a little bit slight. I don't worry about adding weight. Today's strength and conditioning programs, he'll be 185 by his sophomore year. I care less. Yeah. He can flat out run, very technical, and he's aggressive. He'll get after it in the run game. He came down, they put him at free safety, and he was hitting guys like downhill off tackle plays. I'm like, holy moly. So anytime you get kids like that have his technical ability outside and they can still come in the box, that's why I brought up playing nickel, that's a win. And Auburn needs as many bullets in the gun as they can get, playing, catch up to some of their arch rivals on their roster. You and I'll talk about that in a little bit. This is how you do it. Yeah. You get kids that, Alabama and other schools wanted, LSU and other schools wanted. That's how you win in the recruiting world.
Yeah, and we saw Auburn have a strong defensive back class in 2024. You got to stack those, and that's kind of what Hugh Freeze is starting to do here. And, I mean, he's kind of the lone DB back there right now. Is that right? That didn't feel right when I said it, but I guess he's the lone corner right now.
Yeah, he is. He's something that's interesting, excuse me, Freeze said on signing day, our expectation was to have a top 10 class year one. Year two, we want to project a top 5 class.
Right
now, with Williams in the fold and 8 other really good players, their D-line class is nasty. This is a team that is not only meeting their needs, they need a lineman type class. They're doing well there. They're getting guys that the other SEC brethren they look up to, like the Georgias and Alabamas, really want and are recruited, etc. When you get those kind of kids, you forget the rankings, although they're nice. It's the most important barometer. I'll take what Alabama is doing and LSU, etc. at corner and schools like that every time. Florida wanted this kid, etc. They're doing that, and they have a projection right now. They're on that cusp of a top 5 class, and there's still a bunch of big fish in state that Auburn could get, like Zion Grady, Eric Winters, both those kids down at Enterprise. Obviously, they got kids like Garrett Smith, etc. up there at Thompson. Yeah. They can have a top 5 class. It's amazing because everybody says, oh, we want this is what we want. It sounds great to fans. They're actually showing they can do it.
Right, which is they're not just talking the talk, but they're walking the walk, which is different with this coaching staff than the previous ones that we've seen. And that's encouraging. I don't think there's any question about it. As far as him being from Buford, we've talked about the importance of pipelines and things like that. Another reason why this addition is so big.
Yeah, I mean, Proati and some of the other guys that are recruiting the linebackers from there. But every single year, Buford's going to have a top 100 kid nationally. Sure. You can pretty much put it in the books. Sometimes it's 2 or 3 of them. And it's Greater Atlanta. These kids have been tested, so you watch their film. They're not just beating up on some Johnny-come-lately. They're playing against quality competition. I'll take that. And that school, among others, 2 or 3 in the state, when you get players from that school, it has some cachet to it. Grayson, Langston Hughes, Buford, there's a few of them like that. So that's important as well. This is the state that Auburn must make hay in outside of their own the most if they want to consistently be in the top 10 and certainly if they want to be in the top 5.
Recruiting Georgia is huge. There's no question. No question about it.
Yeah.
So when you look at defensive backs, this is a guy that probably up until, he and Auburn parted ways, like Zach Etheridge would have been a part of his recruitment. Is it kind of nice, to say, okay, all right, we've moved on. This is a new defensive back era. Charles Kelly, Coach McGriff being involved with the defensive backs moving forward. I don't know. It almost feels a little symbolic too. It's like, okay, we got the next one. Post Zach Etheridge.
I hope so. I mean, every time you get something that comes into the fold, and whether it's a coach, whether it's a player, you always wonder when something changes. You lose a great player, you lose a great coach, or both. Yeah. How does the next year trend, especially in the portal era? You're always one player away or one coach away from things going sideways. That's what makes college football really interesting and also very concerning. I mean, Auburn's had some coaching attrition this year. Freeze has done a tremendous job. You and I talked about, we were a little concerned when certain guys left. We're like, how's this going to go with recruiting? You don't know. Right. And it's, I mean, they've still hit the ground running. That's number one. They're organized inside the recruiting office, et cetera. And they're actually hiring guys that put in the effort, because I've spoken to multiple kids that have, new coach on the trail, already built a relationship with them. This is another example, because you're not getting kids like Williams just kind of half effort. You're going to have to put it all in. Yeah.
So when 9 commits now in this 2025 class, according to On3, 8th nationally, 3rd in the SEC, which I would argue is more important. So when you look at the current state of this class, it's very D-line heavy / edge. A lot of defensive players on the line of scrimmage, which is good. I mean, if you wanted a position group to be stacked on, that's probably the one that you would pick, especially after going so heavy in wide receiver a year ago. What does this class need moving forward in your eyes?
Number one is offensive tackle. We say it pretty much every time I come on your show, and there's a handful of those guys they're in the mix with. Tavares Dice is a very important recruit. He's a super athletic kid out of Langston.
Seems like he's an Auburn lean right now too.
Yeah, I mean, he's been to Auburn more than any other school. He doesn't hide his love for Auburn. I've interviewed him face to face. He's very pro Auburn. Mm-hmm. They're the heavy favorite, in my opinion. That's just my own conjecture.
Sure.
And that's a kid that has offers, Miami and SEC schools all over the country. That would be a big pickup. They need one more. And is that hard? Yeah, to a certain degree, because they need guys. They're not going to be lucky like getting Percy this year to transfer from Mississippi State. That's not going to happen every year. I watched him yesterday at practice. We'll talk about that in a minute. I was like, holy cow, that guy's humongous.
Right.
So they need guys like that to come out of high school ranks so you can develop in your system and it's easier to adapt. He's a rare kid that can do that. But you still want to get the high school kids. And then the other thing, and this is just me being greedy, openly admit it, you and I talked about, so we walked into practice yesterday.
Greedy. Do it.
Okay. They got Cam Coleman and they got 4 really good receivers. Cam was the first guy I just happened to see. They don't have to get Cam Coleman in this class. But if you get another elite receiver to go with that group, and you can start rotating guys in and out of the lineup, they're always fresh, those big bodies, those athletic guys. Like they get Travis Smith out of Atlanta Westlake. They have him coming up on an unofficial visit. It changes your program because other teams have to know where multiple guys are on every play. And then your playbook is wide open. Hugh Freeze is an excellent play caller anyway. You give him those kind of chess pieces, going to light up scoreboard.
Yeah. Brian, you wrote a story at auburndaily.com, went up Wednesday afternoon. 2 visitors that could change Auburn's 2025 recruiting class. We discuss that next, right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at eBay Motors. eBay Motors, passion, drive, and patience is what brings home the winning trophy. It's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. With over 122 million parts for your ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or you get your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber and not cash. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Brian Smith, Locked On Recruiting Insider, here with us. You wrote the story. 2 visitors that could change Auburn's 2025 recruiting class. First off, who are they and why?
Number 1 is Andrew Maddox, defensive lineman out of Oak Grove High School in Hattiesburg. That state is just unbelievable with defensive linemen. They've got 2 elite kids in Hattiesburg, by the way.
Sure.
He is a guy that can play strong side. He can play 3-tech. He can get up the field and be a pass rusher. He's a long kid. I think he's eventually going to be the prototypical 6'4", 295, in-your-face D-tackle teams have to prepare for and or double team. Never have enough of them. Auburn has an unofficial visit lined up with this young man on the 16th of March. He's also got schools like Ole Miss, LSU, Miami. Kind of puts things in perspective. He is an elite prospect. Okay. The other young man is Daryl Johnson. He is the prototypical modern linebacker, around 200 pounds, could play hybrid. He could play will. And he's a guy that in the old school would have been strong safety. Downhill, can get after you as a blitzer, and he can play well in coverage with, running backs, tight ends, etc. He's a versatile piece that's a 3-down player. Those are hard to find. Auburn is going to have him on campus later in March as well. These are kids they don't necessarily lead with, but that's why this season, I talk about it constantly on this show and at Auburn Daily.
Yeah,
you must hit the home run on your unofficial visits because they ain't coming back for an official if you don't.
Good point.
So, you know what? These are kids, again, Georgia and Mississippi. We talk about those states all the time. Obviously, Alabama is the most important, but those are the next two on the board. Here's why.
Yeah. Okay. So Andrew Maddox, Daryl Johnson. Why'd you highlight those two guys specifically? Auburn's going to have a lot of guys on unofficial visits throughout the month of March. Why these two guys specifically did you single out?
Number one, they're both really good. Like they're both top 100 kind of players. So
both of them are 4 stars on every site.
Yeah. They can play for anybody, LSU, Bama, whatever school you want to pick.
Sure.
Number two, you're talking about difference makers on defense. In the history that I've studied of Auburn and watching them, what Auburn is really, really good, they've had down the hill linebackers, big time. Like Tracy Rocker's my all-time favorite player, not named Bo Jackson, at Auburn.
Sure.
And, I mean, he was just a man-child. When you have guys like that, it changes things. It's the attitude, everything, the stadium, it's electric.
Mm-hmm.
They need some more of that. They need another guy up front. You and I have talked about it, that the other team has to kind of scheme against. They don't have it. So I want more bullets in the gun there. And I just love the kid's film. The offer list back set up. Johnson is a kid that you can play in multiple spots, and you can use him as a chess piece in the nickel package. You can use him on your base 4-3. He could be a 3-4 outside linebacker. It doesn't matter. And he can cover. If you cannot cover in today's game as a linebacker, your defense is going to get
you're limited. Yeah.
You're going to get smoked. So you don't have to package him out. You don't have to sub him out. If teams go in tempo, he's on the field. Those guys, he's got a gazillion offers for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
He's kind of like Popo that Auburn signed a handful of years ago. He's that kind of athlete that can run around and do some different things that most guys can't. I don't know if he's quite that good, but he's in that realm. And look, SEC, Miami, Florida State, whoever, they're all coming after him for a reason. So
yeah,
Auburn could get a lot better on defense. And I trust long-term that Freeze and the staff are going to be good with the offense. Yeah. Defense is about recruiting. You can ask any coach about it off the record, on the record. You can scheme offense. Defense about dudes. Get your chasing the ball. It's recruiting.
Yeah. So we will see what happens. Once again, that is Andrew Maddox from Oak Grove over in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, and then Daryl Johnson from Eastman, Georgia. Julian Lewis, Juju, the top quarterback in the country, is visiting Auburn on an unofficial visit this spring. Your thoughts on Auburn's chances getting this very elite and talented quarterback?
Until otherwise proven, I'm saying he's flipping to Georgia. I've said that multiple times.
Yeah.
Auburn Daily, etc. But he's been to Auburn. He's set to come back. I didn't hear anything when I was up at Under Armour about him taking the Auburn visit again, and then it popped out right after. And I'm like, okay, now I believe they have a shot.
Okay.
Until that, I mean, everybody takes like one visit to school X, Y, and Z if it's close, because he's 2 hours at most from Auburn.
Yeah, Carrollton.
Carrollton. It's not that far. So I wasn't surprised he visit. You don't take visit 2 unless that school is truly an option. And I kept hearing, like, and Auburn's involved too. And Auburn's involved. I'm like, okay, well, I want to see it more than I want to hear it. Mm-hmm. And the list is out. He's going to visit again. Georgia, Bama, USC, where he's quote unquote committed. I'm not buying that. Colorado,
like USC is going to land him when it's all said and done.
I think he's going to end up at one of the 3 schools in the Southeastern Conference that I just mentioned. I think Colorado is kind of the random outlier. I have no idea how to calculate Colorado recruiting. That's bizarre.
I get it.
But look, if you're going to beat Alabama and Georgia, the easiest way to do it is to take players away that they covet. I've been told that Kirby is not taking a quarterback until he knows Julian Lewis is not going to take the spot at Georgia. That's pretty picky because there are several other quarterbacks they could take or would come that they're passing on right now. He's going, I give him credit. He's going all in to flip him. That's cool. But at the same time, Auburn's not going to give up either. So it's pretty attractive. Freeze has a really good track record with quarterbacks.
Yeah.
And obviously the young man that just took over the job of Bama knows how to coach quarterbacks too. This is intriguing. I have no idea how he calculates the final decision. Because, I mean, I'm not an SC guy, but obviously Lincoln Riley can coach quarterbacks. It's insane. So Colorado, again, the outlier, I'm not buying them at all, but they are listed as his fifth school. So we'll see if he gets to that point where he's going to take an official. That's the next goal. This visit's so good, you get the official. Does Auburn have a chance, though? I would have said iffy at best, and then I saw that he's going to come back in March.
Yeah.
I mean, it's everything. So you have to go all in on a kid like that because I was talking about this with a buddy of mine the other day, John Garcia. I'm like, he's got to be one of the top 3 most accurate high school quarterbacks I've ever watched.
Wow. That's
saying a lot. I mean, a lot of elite 11s, travel the country, LA to Miami. He's just that elite. So he's not the biggest guy, but he just puts it between the eyes every time.
Where are you with this other quarterback? And I'm not positive on his first name pronunciation. Is it Husan Longstreet? He's a California kid. But it seems like Auburn's involved with him too.
This is a wild situation because, like, I think of Auburn recruiting. It's like we started the show. It's Mississippi, it's Alabama, it's Georgia, a little Florida, maybe a South Carolina kid. We're done.
Yeah.
Here we are in LA. This kid's a mobile quarterback. I mean, that's as far away from Mississippi, Alabama as you're going to get.
Yeah.
And figuratively and literally, he's a kid that Auburn's after. And he fits Hugh Freeze's offense. He's a mobile kid. He's got a gun. Auburn, I haven't spoken to him yet, and I'm curious. I'm going to try to get him on the phone, but this is a guy that would fit Freeze to a T. He's got offers from all over the country, top 10 by any pretty much recruiting service you're going to see.
I think Texas A&M. I think he likes Texas A&M as well. I've read that a few places.
Yep, he likes them. I don't know how it's going to work out. Again, they got DeAndre Carter last year out of Mater Dei. That's about as hard a pull as you can get.
Sure.
I asked DeAndre to his face. He said, once I visited, I had no idea. I just love the place. Sometimes people dislike Auburn. You got to find out by putting 2 feet on the ground. So they're after him. And again, Hugh Freeze has a track record with quarterbacks. It's not going to be a hard sell. So maybe they can get him to come out here. And there is a trend, not with Auburn, but think about all the guys from the state of California that are either currently in the Southeastern Conference as a quarterback or recently, like Jackson Dart, California kid. There's a certain young man with a really unique spelling and his name at Tennessee that I'm not going to try to pronounce. He's a California kid. There's a bunch of those. So with the Big Ten now engulfing what's the top schools out there, a lot of the kids are leaving. It's a little easier pull for Auburn than I would have normally said, but I still need to learn more about him.
Sure. All right, you were with me as we went to watch Auburn's open window of practice earlier in the week. Brian, we'll get your biggest takeaways from that in just a moment, right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook, and you can get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. I'm seeing Auburn about a 7.5 wins, obviously, for Auburn in 2024. If you think Auburn's going to outperform that, be sure to go check out our friends at FanDuel. Or if you say, hey, yeah, I think 6 or 7 wins is probably where we're going to be at. Once again, kind of put your money where your mouth is over at FanDuel. FanDuel.com/lockedon to shoot your shot. FanDuel is the official sports betting partner of the NBA and the Locked On Podcast Network. Brian Smith, final few minutes of today's edition of Locked On Auburn, talking all things Auburn, Cruton, but let's pivot just a little bit here. You were with the rest of us, watched about 20 minutes or so of Auburn's first practice of spring. Your biggest takeaway was what?
Percy is large and he can move.
Percy Lewis.
That's right. The left tackle for Auburn, it's going to be important for every team moving forward. It's not going to change. When you get a kid from one of your rivals, ironically, because he played for Mississippi State, to come over, and I walked by that kid and I went, I'm just glad that I'm not the one paying the grocery bill. 6'6", 345, and I believe every bit of that. But he can move, man. Like his lateral quickness, watch him go through the drills.
Yeah.
I'm like, this kid's going to get paid. And I went and looked up his stats on Pro Football Focus. He only gave up 2 sacks last year and 7 pressures. A left tackle in the SEC doing that.
Take it.
Every day of the week, brother. So he's going to get paid. And I think this is a huge coup for them. Number 2,
okay.
I still think, I mean, I know we've talked about this a million times. Cam stood out like a sore thumb. That's good and bad. He's a freakazoid. He's an NFL player, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. They need more guys that are at least in his stratosphere. They don't have enough big receiver size at receiver. That's something that I think we all know. And then finally, I think their quarterback room is better than what a lot of people know. They have I didn't know it. You had told me for 6 months that you liked Brown a lot. Obviously, you know him, etc. But like he's accurate, man. If you put the ball right where it's supposed to be, it works out. It's pretty simple. That's and he does it over and over again. And then, of course, Walker, I mean, that kid's got a gun. He looks like a future NFL. He's
a beautiful ball, man. It's a beautiful ball.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the freshman at 6'4", 220, and he's every bit of it. He looks like he's, take away the face. You can tell he's young. He looks like he's 25 years old.
Sure. Yeah.
That's what I want my quarterbacks to look like. If I can, I'll take that every time.
Yeah. And he was just kind of, standing behind the guys when it wasn't his turn in the rep. Walker White was just kind of like, bopping to the music or whatever. Seemed very relaxed. And normally, your first kind of practice of spring as a true freshman, early enrollee, you're going to be a little tense, right? No, he was comfortable. He felt at home. And I think that's what you want in a quarterback, right?
I was really surprised because I was watching him. I'm waiting for him to throw some ducks. I honestly was. I'm like, here comes an airmail or something. I never saw him throw one. I'm saying he didn't. But like he was just on target and consistent with the basic patterns, like just all the other guys. And I'm like, as athletic as this kid is, if he can pick up the offense, this can be a multiple year starter at Auburn.
Yeah, I mean, whoever's the guy after Peyton Thorne, and maybe one of them wins the job from Peyton this offseason, we'll see. But you got to feel good whether it's Hank Brown or Walker White, whoever the guy after Peyton Thorne is. I think either of them will have the potential and the cast around them for Auburn to compete for a conference championship. I think one of those two guys will do it, whoever wins the job.
Garner's the wild card. I don't know, like, if he's going to get a shot this year or he's going to stick around.
Did he look a little like, I don't know, of the 4 guys, and it's the first day of spring, I get all of that. But, I mean, his passes seem to be the worst of the 4, which I hate because he's been in the program the longest.
I know. He's not a kid that doesn't have an arm, etc. I remember him through recruiting. Like, he was highly coveted. So I don't know, but the other guys I think are already as good, if not better than him. So
yeah,
he needs to have a really good spring. It's day one. Everybody has a crappy day once in a while, but I didn't think he was as good as the others, but he still has a lot of talent too.
Yeah, no question. No question. I want to circle back to the O-line for a second. You mentioned Percy Lewis at left tackle. But one thing I don't think is being stated enough is Xavion Miller coming back for another season, because I don't think he physically looks too much different than Percy Lewis. Another large body his feet are moving so much better now than they were last spring. And that was kind of the big thing against Xavier last spring was I'd ask how he was doing, and the response I'd get, he's raw, his feet need work. And then he made the jump from spring to fall where they couldn't keep him off the field. He started the year at right tackle. And now I think the next natural step in his progression is for him to be even more effective in both the rushing and passing game. And I think he's going to do it. I thought he passed the eye test a ton for me earlier in the week as well.
If you can have multiple guys on third and short that you can rely on, that's the first thing I look at, though. I know I'm a little old school. Yeah, Percy, I'm pretty confident there. And you got the big fella you just mentioned as well. Auburn's offensive line was okay last year, but was it where they wanted it to be realistically? No. They had moments like for a lot of the Alabama game, they were really good against really good players. So they had moments, but now you need more consistency. And part of that is just adding talent. They got bigger, stronger, faster. So they're an improved football team up front.
Who'd you spend the most time watching during the window? Was the O-lineman or the quarterbacks?
O-line, because it's so hard with O-line, because it's not just about who's good. How do they mesh? And they were just doing some basic blocking drills with sleds and stuff, but sometimes that goes half-hearted, even in the middle of the season. Sure. And I was curious about it. and they were dialed in. And that's a good sign. Like when you was walking around before he came over and talked to all of us in the media, he isn't over there bitching at anybody because he didn't have to be. That's the other thing overall I kind of took. First day, there's some loafers usually. It doesn't matter if it's an SEC practice, Utah State, or anywhere else.
Well, when Freeze walked over to us, there was a group of like 6 or 7 media members there, and he's like, I really like the energy today. Wow. Great.
I know,
thanks for sharing that with us. That's good. That's good info.
Yeah. And he was right. I mean, it didn't look like anything needed. He was just observing. He was in the middle of the field watching everybody, letting his coaches coach. He's not a guy that's going to rip everybody apart and take their position away from them. He watches. He didn't even come over to the O-line, which, by the way, is a good sign. I was wondering.
I mean, he believes in that guy.
So at least when I was there, I didn't see him anywhere near the O-line. I'm like, where is he? Oh, there he is. He's over there. He was watching more on the other side of the field.
Yeah.
That's a good sign because obviously they need to take that next step up front. Horsey's there. They got guys back. They're getting another year of the system. It should be an uptick, I would think. 30, 40 rushing yards a game this year. I think they're going to be a different team.
That'd be huge.
Well, I mean, it doesn't sound like, 30 yards, Brian. Why does it matter? Because that's a lot of third and shorts you're picking up, and a handful of others plays like that matters. Got to get you into the red zone. Good things happen.
Any kind of uptick on third down on both sides of the ball is going to be huge for Auburn, especially in these toss-up games when they go to Kentucky, when they go to Missouri, and when they host Oklahoma. It's like, if you convert another 2 or 3 third downs, like that's the difference.
100%. I know that's and coaches get bitched at because they say these cliche lines like, we just got to do the little things better. The little things
it's that simple. Sometimes it's that simple.
It's just like exactly where your foot goes on your first step for some, a zone step or whatever. Yeah. There's a reason they're bitching in March because they know in November when you're playing frickin' Alabama, if it's not right, it is not going to go well. It takes a lot of practice to get that going. So it was good yesterday, and I thought the O-line has improved quite a bit. That was probably my happy point, if you will.
Sure. Brian, how can people check out everything that you've got going on?
auburndaily.com and at FBScout_Florida on social media. A lot of stuff going to be happening with the Tigers in the next month or so, recruiting-wise. It is pivotal. They're real close to setting up quite a few official visits. This month is going to be the key to getting that done.
Yep, no question about it. You can read all of Brian's work and my work at auburndaily.com. Please like the video. Please subscribe. We'll see you tomorrow. This has been Locked On Auburn.